Now in today's video, I'm going to be showing you how you can leverage this amazing and one of the most powerful Supabase features in your no-code Flutterflow apps. Now, before we get started, as always, all the apps and all the resources that I demonstrate on this channel are going to be available to view and or clone from my Patreon community. And if you're still not a member of our amazing, rapidly growing Patreon community, then definitely check it out via the link in the description below the video. Now, first, let me show you an app that I built. So this is a very, very simple app that displays a blog article with a comment. And so assuming that we've left a comment and now we want to edit the comment. So our initial comment was awesome. I really loved your article about visiting Iceland. And so this is the comment here. It's pre-filled. And let's say we want to edit it. So I'm going to put great article. Okay, and now let's say I want to press save in order to save my new comment. And as you can see, if I press save, nothing happens. This comment should automatically refresh because the system is set up that once we update it, it automatically refreshes. But as you can see, nothing changed. It's still the old comment. And the reason it did not save the comment is because we have security policies, right? So if we go back to Supabase, which is what I use to store this data, we have this comments table here. And if we click on this policy here, as you can see, we only have one policy. And this is a read access policy, okay? We do not have a specific policy that allows us to update comments. And that is why our changes are not going through. Now, this is absolutely fine. This is great. But wouldn't it be nice to tell the user, hey, you know, you've tried updating this comment, you've tried doing something, but unfortunately, our security policies that we have in place don't allow that specific operation. And so in this default case, right, if you were to go out and build a Flutterflow app and have your security policies in place or not have the security policy because you don't want people to update this content, what's going to happen here is that the user is not going to see any message. This is the default behavior, okay? And this is a problem because, well, these policies are awesome. They allow you to fine-tune who gets to do what, but you know, we need to tell the user that, listen, you know, you've tried updating, but you are not an admin or you don't have the right policies. Well, let me show you this second variation of this page that I built. So once we go back here, it's the same thing, but now if we try to change this comment here, we say, well, great article, and let's say I change the body. I say really nice description of Iceland or something like this. And now let's say I want to save this comment. Well, I press save, and what happens is I am told exactly what happens. You do not have permissions to complete this operation, okay? And so in this scenario, we get the best of both worlds, right? We can set our permissions on this database, right? We can create policies here, and on our app, and in our app, right, on the UI, we can actually tell the user what happens. And in order to do this, you need to make a couple of changes. Let me go back to our app and let me show you how exactly this is done. So here I am back in our Flutterflow app. And as you can see, this is the original page, okay? And so what we're doing is we are loading the comments here. We're displaying the comments here. And we're also pre-filling these input boxes here with the comments so that the user can immediately see the initial comment and they can edit it and change it. And so this is our flow right here. If we open this up, this is the default flow. Okay, we have two actions. This one is disabled because I'm going to be showing it to you in just a second. But if you were to do it, this is how you would do it essentially, right? You would have this update row action here, and then you would just refresh the database request. And the issue here is that if you have security policies in place, which you should be using, right? If you're going to be using Supabase, which is the best database backend for most apps and the one that I highly, highly recommend, then you definitely want to be setting up these policies called RLS policies. Okay, you always want to be doing that. And once you've set up policies, the issue here is that in your app, there's really no feedback that, you know, you are doing something that goes goes against one of the policies, there's really no way for Flutterflow to let you know, because Supabase is going to block this action on their end, and those changes are not going to go through, but Flutterflow is not going to know what happened. So Flutterflow is not going to tell you anything. And so the way that we solve this problem is by doing a little bit extra. Okay, so this is the second page here. And as you can see, I have this container inside this row that will only be displayed if this error boolean, this app state variable is true. And when will this variable be true? Well, if we click on the save here and we open up our flows, I now have 3 flows. I don't have 2 flows just like before. I don't have just this and this. I also have this special action block that checks results. Okay, and here I'm using an action block. Okay, and so if we take a look at this action block, what happens here is that we take a look at the result and we see if we got any data back. Okay, because with Supabase, Supabase can tell us how many records were modified. And so here we are checking if the number of items that were modified, essentially the number of items that were returned to us, if it's greater than 0, then we can do something. Well, in this case, we're going to say comment updated. On the other hand, if it's 0, meaning that nothing happened, nothing was updated because of some issue, and that's because of permissions, then we are setting this error 1 to true. And when this error 1 is true, you get this message here. Okay, and so if I go back to my row level security here, and let's say I add another policy that will allow updates. And so I'm going to click here, I'm going to create a new policy, I'm going to say get started quickly, and I'm going to select enable updates. I'm going to use this template, and instead of having conditions here, I'm just going to say true, because I am okay with updates. I don't care who is making these updates, I'm okay. This is obviously just for testing only. And so I'm going to call this updates all, meaning all users can make updates. Okay, I'm going to say true. I'm going to review. I'm going to update this. And now if we go back to our app, we will not have an issue, right? So this first page here that does not throw an error message, it's going to go through perfectly, right? So if I say great, if I change this awesome to great and I hit save, it's going to get updated, right? As you can see, it updated. And if we come to the second page, it also says great. And let's say we update it back to awesome, let's say. And let's say my comment is amazing article. Okay, something like this. And I say save, we are not going to get an error, right? It says comment updated. We're not going to see an error. And that is because back inside of our Flutterflow app, if we go to this action block and review it, we have these 2 conditions. Okay, so this one shows a snack bar, whereas this one, if the operation fails, it sets this variable error 1 to true, which was the case just a couple of moments ago. But now that we've created this permission, we have this comment updated snack bar. And so by using this special action block right after your backend call, you can tell the user whether their operation was successful or not. Now, this next example is slightly more complex, but it's exactly the same idea. So here I'm on another page called team assignments. And what I can do here is I can assign different users to different teams. So as you can see, James here is assigned to the engineering team, whereas Mike is assigned to the advertising team. Now, let's say I want to assign James to another team. Okay, so let's say I want to assign James to HR. So all I need to do is click HR, and that should assign James to HR. But there's a problem. We have an error message. You don't have permissions to complete this operation. Must be an admin. And the same thing would happen if I try to assign Mike, let's say, to HR, right? We still see this error message. And that is because I'm logged in as Jake, and Jake is not in the admin role. We need to be in the admin role to reassign these users. Now, let's say I log out as Jake and I log in as Rob. Well, Rob, as it happens to be, is an admin. He should be able to change these team assignments. And so I'm going to go to one of my other pages. I'm going to log out as Jake, and I'm going to log back as Rob. And as you can see, now I am logged in as Rob. And now if I want to reassign one of these users to another team, I should be able to do so. So let's say I want to assign James or reassign James from the engineering team to HR. So I'm going to click here. and we've just reassigned James. And as you can see, there are no errors. And even if I refresh this app, you should see that James will still be in the HR team. And so here's our app. We come back here, and as you can see, James is in HR. And the same thing for Mike. Let's say I want to move Mike from advertising to engineering. Well, now I've done it, because the moment that I change this setting here, change a different option in this drop down here, it's automatically assigned. And I can also refresh this app, and you will see that that change should still be effective. So as you can see, Mike is now in the engineering team and James is still in the HR team. And so with this example, not only do we let the user know any of the issues that pop up anytime we want to complete the operation, but we now have access to roles. And how exactly is this done? Well, if we go back to our app and we select this page, as you can see, I still have this error message, and it has conditional visibility and only gets displayed when this error 2 is valid. And the next thing I want to show you is this list here. This is actually a list view that we are pulling data from a user team's view, and this is a view that gets all the users and their current teams. And so if we click on edit, you can see that this is our backend call here. And if we select one of these drop downs here, this is actually a custom component, and we had to wrap this drop down into a custom component because it's inside of a list view. And so it was important to make it into a custom component. And in fact, if we edit this custom component, you can see that it only has a drop down, but we're also passing a lot of things into this custom component. So we're passing things like team names, team value, we're passing in the current team, as well as the ID of that record. And we need all that because if we select the drop down, we open it, we have actions that are happening, right? We are doing this update call. So the moment somebody goes in here and they update it, right, they select something else, this action unselected gets triggered. And here we have this special source that first checks whether that update was successful or not. And so as you recall, before I had all of this as a separate action block that I was using here, but here I have all of this in line in this action flow, just to make things a little bit simpler. Now, of course, it's up to you how you can implement it. I think action blocks are perfect for this kind of scenario. They are very, very flexible. You can pass arguments to them. You can reuse them all throughout your app. They make things very, very easy. And so as you can see, what we have here is that we are checking whether we have any rows that were updated, because in this backend call, you can do something called return matching rows. And this allows you to return the rows that are updated. And so here we are trying to find the specific row that the user is trying to update. And here we are updating the team ID, meaning that if the user selected another role, another position, another department, then that is what is going to be updated, right? So once we have all of this information, we have an update row call, and an update row call is essentially updates the row in question. And here we are checking, right? So if it's successful, we say success. If it's not successful because of permissions, we set this error to Boolean value, this app state value, to true, and rebuild the page. And once we rebuild the page, you're going to be seeing this error message here. Now, let's quickly jump into our Supabase, and so that I can quickly show you how I have everything set up. So there's actually two pieces to this puzzle, right? First is the roles. Now, this table just has the roles that we're going to be using. Next, I have the A user roles, and this is a way for me to assign different roles to different users, or put different users into different roles. And so as you can see, this role ID of 1, this is the admin role, right? So if I click here, you can see this is the admin role in this A roles table. It's simply the ID here, right? So if I go back, and this 2 here, this is the other role. This is the regular user role. Okay, so now we have a way of connecting our users to different roles. Now, of course, you can put one user into multiple roles. So you can have one user that belongs to multiple roles. So like one user could be a user role, they could be an admin, they could be an auditor. There could be many, many roles that one user can be part of. And the same thing in reverse, because one role can hold multiple users. So you can have multiple distinct users in, let's say, the admin role, right? That's kind of what, the purpose of roles. And so here we have the linkage between roles and users. This is our A user roles table. And here's a simple view that I've created that allows us to see which user belongs to which roles here. So as you can see, this is Rob, they're an admin, whereas this is Jake, and they only belong to this user role. Now, the second piece of this database schema is the teams, right? So we have users belonging to roles, but we also have users belonging to teams. And so if you click on A teams, you can see that we have 3 teams right now: HR, engineering, and advertising. And if we click on A user teams, you can see the connections. This is a table that allows us to link users to various teams. So here we have one user, they're in this team. Here we have another user, they're in that team. And so if you click on this view here, this view was built so that we can easily display all of this information, because this view has more information than just this table here. With this table, we need to connect to other tables, whereas this view gives us all of this information. And so we use this view in our app to pull up the emails, to pull up all the available teams, to pull up the current team. And that way, when we launch the app, we can display all the teams, but we can also have it selected on their current team, right? Because if you select something here, engineering is not selected by accident. That is their team right now. And if we would have changed it to HR, then once you reload the page, HR is going to be selected by default. And so this way, we have the user email, we have all the teams, and we have their current team. Now, the most important thing about this setup is when we need to update the records, when we need to reassign the user from one team to another team. And so if you select this table here, A user team, we actually have 2 active RLS policies. So if we select here, we have this standard read all policy, right? So anybody can read that table, anybody can see the team assignments. But when it comes to updating, this is the secret sauce, because here we are checking to make sure that the user, the currently logged in user, is part of the admin role. They must be part of the admin role. So if you edit this right here, you see we have this special sauce here inside of this using expression. And as you can see here, we are checking that the role name is admin. And so this way we get the authenticated user. So whoever is logged into our app, we get their role ID, we get their role name, and we make sure that it's admin, okay? Because if they're not admin, this thing would fail, and as a result, you would see that error message that you saw when you were logged in as anybody else besides Rob. So if we were to log out and log back in as Jake, you would see the error message up on top. And because Rob is part of the admin role, we are not seeing any error message. And so as you can see, this is a very, very useful proof of concept when it comes to building apps that rely on authorization, that rely on roles, and especially when you need to tell the user that what they're trying to do is not allowed by our RLS policies. Because if you were just going to do it in Flutterflow without, taking that into account, then the user is not going to see that, what they're trying to do is not being done in the back end. They're probably going to get very, very frustrated. Now, in this last example, I want to show you a scenario that is very, very common. And I'm 100% sure you're going to be putting this to use right after you finish watching this video. Now, on this page, you can see a list of user accounts. You can see their picture, you can see their name. And the idea here is that if we click on their avatar, if we click on their their profile picture, we should be able to update it by uploading a new one. Now, as you can see, I'm logged in as Rob, and so technically Rob should not be able to update anybody else's profile picture. And so let's say I want to update Mike's profile picture, and so I'm gonna click here and I'm gonna select an image to update the profile picture. Let's say I want to update it to this new image, okay, to this picture here. So I'm gonna open this image, and as you can see, it says uploading file, and then nothing happens. Why doesn't anything happen? Well, because we have permissions, right? Rob cannot update anybody else's profile picture except their own, except his own, right? So Rob can only update Rob's profile picture. And so when we try to update Mike, you have kind of the start of this update flow, but then it kind of, falls through. Something happens, and that is because we have permissions, and the permissions block that behavior. Let's try to update James's. Okay, I'm going to select James. I'm going to select it to new image here. The updating flow begins, but then it abruptly ends for the same reasons. Now let's go ahead and update Rob's profile picture. So if I click here and I select new image, it says uploading file, success. And guess what? We see the new image. And that is because the way that we have set up permissions only allows the user to update their own profile picture, okay? And I'm going to be showing you the exact permissions in just a second. But did you notice a couple of problems with this setup? Well, the main problem here is that anytime we have permission issues, right? So anytime we try to update somebody else's profile picture, something starts working, but then it ends abruptly, right? So if I try Mike and I update it, you see it says uploading file, and then nothing happens. And this is a big problem, right? Because the user doesn't know what's going on. The user is going to be emailing customer support. The user is going to be confused, or at worst case scenario, the user is going to get frustrated, right? Because they're trying to do something, but we have permissions, and that's fine, but the user does not know about it. Okay, now let me show you a different scenario. Now on this page, we have the same exact screen, but now you're gonna notice a slightly different behavior. So let's say we want to update Mike's picture. Okay, we shouldn't be able to do it, but we at least want the system to tell us. So we're gonna select this. I'm gonna select new image, and now it's uploading, okay? And now it tells us upload failed. You can only change your own profile picture. You saw that? This was something that did not happen in the previous example. Now let's go ahead and try to update James' profile picture. Since we're logged in as Rob, we shouldn't be able to update James's either, okay? So let's click here. I'm gonna select new image. It says uploading, and we get an error message. Upload failed. You can only change your own profile picture. Okay, good. Let's go ahead and change Rob's. We are logged in as Rob. We should be able to update Rob's. If we select this, select new image, and now it's updating, success, and there's the new profile picture, okay? So do you notice the big difference? The big difference is that we're actually telling the user of any problems that arise, of any problems that come up. And this is very important. So let's go ahead and jump back into our app, and let me show you how this is set up. So here we are back into our app, and we are looking at this profile picture 0 and profile picture 1, okay? And the reason I have 2 is because I want to show you something very important. Now, before we talk about this app, let's jump into my Supabase, and let me show you how I have this thing locked down. Let me show you how I have my storage configured with permission. So if we go back to Supabase and we select storage this time, I have here a bucket. Now it's important to make your bucket public, because if you do not make it public, Flutterflow will not be able to read and display the images that you're uploading at all. So it's very important. Still, even if it's public, you can still create powerful permissions on this bucket. So if you click on this permissions, as you can see, we have 3 permissions. The first permission is a select permission. Okay, this is a standard permission. We have a public bucket, and this permission allows everybody to read what's in the bucket, right? It allows the app to display the images. It's a very important permission. You always want to have this set up. And so the only condition I have is that the bucket, the name of the bucket is image, which is what this, what the name of the bucket is. Then I have 2 more permissions. I have a permission to insert, different files into the bucket, which is an important permission for us. And we also have this update permission. Now, the permission that we're going to be dealing with in this app is going to be this insert permission. So if you click here, you can see that this is a special permission. So what we're checking here for is that the bucket is called image and the storage folder name is equal to the ID of the user, because that is how we have this whole thing set up, right? So if you go to image, as you can see, we have these folders here that correspond to the IDs of the user. And inside of our app, as I'm going to show you in just a second, we make sure to only upload the images to the specifically designated users folder. Okay, so if the user's ID is this, it needs to be uploaded here. And that is why we have that permission. That permission allows us to do it only if it's the currently logged in user. And so we are forcing the app to upload, into the ID, and we have the permission to check if the user who is logged in has access to the bucket. And that way what happens is the user uploads the image, the app uploads it to a specific ID, but if it's not the same ID of the logged in user, this system will not allow it. And now let's go ahead and jump back into the app, and I want to show you some very, very important things that you need to be aware of if you want to duplicate this functionality. And so here we are back into our app. And so this first demo here, remember we had two demos. This first demo is kind of the standard way of doing it, right? So if I select this image here, I have an action flow. So if I open this up, what we're doing is we're uploading media to Supabase, and here we are specifying the bucket. The bucket's name is IMG, and we also are specifying the folder path. Very, very important. We have a certain structure, right? So that, we have the bucket IMG, but the folder is the user ID of the logged in user, okay? And that way we have that permission that controls whether a user can upload to this folder, more specifically if they're the same user. And the next thing that we're doing is we are getting this uploaded file URL, okay? Now this is the standard way of implementing it, right? And so here, if you've uploaded the image, you can have a check whether the uploaded file URL, so here this uploaded file URL is set in non-empty, because when you upload the image, you're gonna get back a URL that you can use to display the image, right? So if it's set or non-empty, that means that chances are it was successfully uploaded, right? So you can have a snack bar, you can say success, you can also update page state, depending on what you need to do in your app. Whereas if you do not get this file URL, then you can do fail. Now the issue that you're going to be facing is if you're going to be implementing this flow here and you upload the image, but you are uploading an image for another user and you have permission issues, none of this is going to execute, right? You're going to have like a big error and none of this is going to execute. And so this part is not going to get executed, okay? And that is why when you run this app, right, and you try to upload an image as somebody else, nothing shows up. Remember, we had that uploading and then stops. Everything stops. We have this radio silence. And that is because what happens here is that when this part tries to upload the image, but there's some permission issues because, the user is trying to modify somebody else's image. What happens here is that it halts. Everything halts. Nothing gets executed after this. And so you cannot show the user anything, right? You cannot display anything to the user. It's a completely different behavior when it comes to storage as compared to regular tables and views, as I shown you in the previous two examples. In the previous example, this entire flow was executed regardless whether, what we were doing was allowed by permissions or it was restricted by permissions. It doesn't matter. We can create a flow and we can display to the user, either success or failure. When you're dealing with storage, this part is not going to get executed, okay? This part is not going to get executed because if you're dealing with storage and you run into a permission issue, then the only thing that's going to get executed is this. And that is why I created a workaround in this second example. And this is the page here. And as you can see, we are displaying various things depending on what's happening. Okay, so we're displaying uploading, we're also displaying an error message, and the reason we are displaying that is because I created a bunch of page state variables. So I'm tracking things like upload start time, upload finish, upload failed, start, as well as the final image here as well. And the reason I need to track all that is because we need a way to track whether the upload has timed out or not, right? This is the key word, timed out. We need to track whether, whatever the user is doing has timed out, because that is exactly what happens in this first example. It times out. There is an error and everything breaks, and we can't tell the user because things break before we can tell the user. And that is why in the second example, I created a very, very powerful workaround. And so there's a couple of things happening here. And of course, the best way to kind of leverage what I did here, the best way to leverage this functionality is obviously to be able to clone this app. And you will be able to do that when you become a member of our amazing Patreon community. But nevertheless, what I have here is a couple of things, right? The first thing that I have here is when this page loads, I have a flow here, right? So if you open this up, I have a flow. And what this flow is waiting for, it's waiting on the user to start uploading, right? So I have a couple of conditions. We have a start condition, and then we have a bunch of conditions when the flow gets started, right? Because when the user initially loads the page, this is true. But when they start uploading the actual image, then we are tracking this. We are saying, okay, upload start is true, upload finish is false, and upload timeout is false. And while this is true, we're essentially waiting, because what this means is that either the person is looking at the screen, or they have looked at the screen and they began uploading the image, but the image has not yet timed out. Okay, because when the image times out, it's going to exit out of this loop. This is a loop, by the way, right? As you can see, loop action. And we're essentially waiting 2 seconds, and we keep waiting. And at some point, either it's going to be successfully uploaded, or it's going to get timed out, right? It's going to time out because of permissions issue. And that is why we need to catch that scenario. And so after, everything finished, we have another condition. We are checking if upload finished is successful, okay? And in this scenario, it did not time out, because we have another flow that I'm going to show you in a second when the user is uploading the image. And so if they successfully upload the image, meaning that, it doesn't deal with permissions, the permissions say everything is fine, and the other flow is going to finish, we have an action that's going to set upload finish to true. And so if this is set to true, there is nothing left to do. But if this is set to false, we are going to set upload fail to true. And because we have set upload fail to true, you're going to be seeing this error message. And now let me show you the other flow, right? This is the flow when you update the image. Okay, so here, if you click on this image, we have 7 actions. And the first thing that we're doing is we're setting a bunch of variables, a bunch of page state variables. Okay, we're saying upload start. We're also saying upload start time, because we need to track when the user began to upload the image, because we need to wait, a certain amount of seconds to see whether it timed out or not. And you're going to see that in a second. And then the last variable is this start variable. When the user begins to upload, we set start to false, because the user is no longer looking at the page. Now we need to worry about whether it timed out or not. And now, and only now, are we actually, beginning to upload the image. And so here we try to upload the image. Here we check whether we got the file URL. And if we did, then what we're going to do is we're going to set upload finish to true, and we're going to do other things. Right here, we're setting a couple of other page variables, but this is going to depend on your app. The most important thing is that we're telling the user success, and we're saying upload finish. Because we've set upload finish there, this thing is going to successfully finish, right? You see, this is going to be upload finished here, and this is not going to do anything. And so as you can see, this flow here on page load and this flow when we try to upload the image, they're connected to each other. And also I have a very small function called upload timeout. And the purpose of this function is to return true if we have been waiting more than 5 seconds since the beginning of the upload. Because the idea is, with this app, uploads are gonna take less than 5 seconds. They're gonna take a couple of seconds. If it has been more than 5 seconds since the start of the upload, then we know that this is an upload timeout and we can take appropriate action. And so, as you can see, this workaround is very, very important in order to bring this amazing behavior. And so, as you can see, if we come over here and I want to change somebody else's picture, I say, well, I want to change Mike. It says uploading file, and then it just, it just times out. It just crashes. Nothing happens. But if we come over here and I upload Mike's here, we're going to get an error message because this thing is going to time out after 5 seconds. It's going to check after 5 seconds and it's going to see whether that image was successfully uploaded. If it wasn't, upload failed. But if we change Rob's, we should have no issues because that's just going to take a couple of seconds, right? Success. You see how it only took like 2 seconds. So it did not time out. And as a result, we see Rob's new picture. Okay. So if you want to implement this kind of functionality, and I consider this kind of functionality the standard in pretty much any kind of an app, right? Where, anytime the user needs to change an image and you want to make sure you have the right permissions that control, whether, the user is able to change their own image or somebody else's image, or maybe you want to use roles and, Rob is going to be part of the admin role, so he can potentially change other people's images, or, Rob is just a user who can only change their own image. You need to implement this type or a similar type of a workaround to make this happen. Otherwise, what's going to happen is, you're going to upload an image, it's going to say uploading, and then nothing is going to happen. Okay, so it's not the best behavior. It's not the best user experience. And so I just showed you several examples of what I feel is Supabase's best and probably most useful, or at least one of their most useful functionalities and features when it comes to building real apps. It's not a flashy feature. It's not a feature that, creates awesome effects. It's a feature that you're going to be using in your apps. And the best way to use this feature is to be able to view and or clone this exact app. And you will be able to do that when you join our amazing Patreon community. Because remember, when you join our amazing Patreon community, not only will you have complete access to this app, meaning that you can do anything and everything that you want. You can leverage these features, leverage each one of these examples, or simply see firsthand, personally, exactly how I've accomplished all of this. But you'll also get access to all of my other apps that I have on this channel. They're all on my Patreon page. You can view and or clone any of them or all of them if you want. It's that easy. Plus, when you join our amazing, rapidly growing Patreon community, you're also going to get access to more content. So things like Q&As, things like deep dives, things like behind the scenes content, lots and lots of more content. In fact, I'm going to be doing a big Q&A this week. I'm going to be answering lots of your questions to the best of my ability. And so if you're not yet a member, definitely make sure you sign up so that you can ask your question, as well as get info on some of the other questions that I'm going to be covering. And best of all, when you join our amazing Patreon community, you're going to be supporting this channel and supporting my work. And so if you've gotten any value with the content that I'm putting out, with all of these tutorials, these feature overviews, Supabase tutorials, Flutterflow tutorials, other app tutorials, I definitely urge you to become a member so that you can get more access to more stuff. And you can do just that via the link in the description below the video.